Yeah, I mean, I think that's always so interesting, right? Because it's this idea of like the American, like pull yourself up from your bootstraps kind of thinking,
Like the
and
horatio
that like
altar,
even
like Rex
though
and
right,
Rex
and even though like there's this like you've got to do this, you got to make it on your own, like you wouldn't be able to make it on your own if you still didn't have your parents helping you in some other area, right? Because we see that there are people who don't have any financial support in other areas and they're not able to get out of that like lower level, right? And so that's part of that, like passing on the wealth, but also like passing on the elitism, right?
Yeah.
I think for my parents, I was like one of those children that like I was talking about college since I was 3, just because they were like college, like
right.
I want a bottle of college, like it was one of those situations. So I like there was never like the first time I heard of someone not like I thought everyone went to college until I was like 12, and like the first time I heard about it, like it was one of my friends and her parents are like really hippie, just long hair, like doing it. And she was like, "Oh, I don't think I'm gonna go to college," and I was like, "That's not a thing. Like everybody goes to college. Like you're gonna go to jail if you don't go to college. Like that's a problem." Yeah. So I feel like my parents have definitely like drilled me with that, but also like even now that I'm in college, and I tell my dad like I'm thinking of sociology. I think I want to do social work, and he's like, "You're not gonna get anything from that. You need to like maybe you should go to law school." I'm like, "But I don't want to go to law school." He's like, "But you can write. Like you're good at you should be writing policy," is what he says, and I'm like,
right.
So
so continuing to pass on the elitism,
and like
right?
there's,
and the wealth.
I mean, it's not like, and the thing is, it's not like there's wealth. Like it's not like there's like an abundant amount of wealth that he's trying to like, gear me towards making by myself. It's that he wants. I know, like my parents want me to, make it on my own, and I want them to, and I definitely want to give back to them because I know that they have definitely funneled so much money and like have made so many sacrifices for me. But I also want to do something that's definitely like very personal, and I feel like I'm like I don't know. That's just, but yeah. Right. So,
but this is like the real. I mean, this is like what the educational system, like why the educational system, why democracy, why capitalism, why all these things work, right?
Yeah.
It's because we want more. So what capitalism speaks to is that we want more, we want it now, and we want it from you, right? And so it's this idea of like moving up the ladder. And so we're always trying to get people to get to the best next thing. I mean, my parents also didn't go to college. I mean, my parents don't even have GEDs, so they're not even high school graduates. And they didn't tell me to go to college. I didn't know that was an expectation. I actually had a girlfriend who was like, "You're going to college," and I was like, "I'm sorry, what's that?" And so I was like, "Okay." And then I got there and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I love this," right? But one of the first things I learned in school was that knowledge equals power. And so, but what is the power that I'm looking for, right? And so the knowledge equals power to the USC and Linden education system is that you access jobs, aka careers that are wealthy when you get done and you're out of here. But that necessarily isn't the case, right? And we see that especially in the United States right now with the income debt ratio of our college students who literally have hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans and they cannot get jobs, right? Or they're getting jobs as social workers making 35, 40 grand a year, but they can't pay off their $200,000 in debt. And so how do you navigate that? How do you negotiate that, right?
Have you ever read like Pierre Bourdieu's theories about like cultural capital, like political? Yeah. So that's kind of just like how education would translate into some sort of like capitalistic power or some sort of strain of that. I mean, it's kind of like abstract to just like draw a direct parallel between like education and money because like all as the aforementioned kind of like complications that you've said about like debt and just like these weird like subjective situations that people have like how does that necessarily translate to economic power like education. So yeah, it's weird to see like where that how that travels in between them.
Well, and I think that you have to also take into consideration the other social identities and privileged identities, right?
Yeah.
And so
the cultural capital too.
The cultural capital, right? Is that my parents probably didn't tell me that I needed to do those things because they didn't realize that like, whoa, you're gonna have to work a little bit harder to get where you get because they didn't do that. It's like my parents are still middle, working class. My dad's a firefighter. My mom's a school teacher. Like they don't make a lot of money, but they're comfortable, right? And they didn't have to do anything to have those jobs. And so to them, they didn't realize that that was like a privilege that they were awarded, most likely because they were white, because my dad's a male. He's very like, I could be a firefighter, right? And like those are things that like not everybody has the access and privilege to have.
Yeah.
But in the interest of time, we've been talking for 18 minutes. Brenda, you're going to have so much fun with this. I know you are. that I just want to say thank you so much for sharing a little bit of your story, and for being honest about your experiences and also about your family experiences. And without further ado, you call this a democracy? What?